a time when Japan's dark shadow of imperialism was hanging over Asia, the common people in Korea were disheartened, and the intellectuals did not know where to turn. Yoon Dong-ju's poems existed in this period. They were refreshing to the readers, like a cool summer breeze on a hot day.
There were times in Korea when poetry did not receive much respect, specifically the years from 1936 to 1943, when Yoon Dong-ju, Korea's one of the most prominent poets, wrote poems. It was a period when being a poet meant living a very tragical life. But now, Yoon Dong-ju's poems that sing of shame and guilt receive much love and attention.
A young man sits deep in thought on a rainy night, with his diary open in front of him. His poem starts off with his confessions of shame. Yoon Dong-ju, he believed in the fact that morning will come. After looking back at himself thoroughly and being ashamed, the young man discovers himself standing in front of history. That's why his poem starts off in a depressing note, like rain drizzling down at dawn. The ending of the poem, however, contains a soundness that is not artificial. Let's travel back to the period in which he looked at himself, singing of his thoughts on that time. Of what was the young poet Yoon Dong-ju ashamed? The answer lies in the situation of the period in which he lived. Let's take a look at his first poem and also his posthumous work, Heaven, the Wind, Stars, and Poems. Yoon dated each of his pieces as if he were writing in his diary. Those were the bleakest days of the 36 years of the Japanese occupation. He expressed himself as someone who was not able to raise his hands even once. This shows his involvement with the tragic experience of his nation, along with his deep sense of shame. He died quietly at a Japanese prison in February 1945. He ended his life at Fukuoka prison in Kyushu, charged for his involvement in the Korean independence movement. Yoon Dong-ju's questionable death has made his readers interpret his works as representative poems of resistance, along with the poems by Lee Yuk-sa. However, if we were to interpret all of Yoon Dong-ju's poems as poems of resistance, we would only be understanding half of his work. The reason his poems are continually being recited so much is because of their pure lyricism. The reason he is ashamed is not only because he is an intellectual during the colonial period. We see the speaker in the poem as someone who has not been able to fulfill his mother's expectations.
일제 치하라고 하는 한국 현대사의 가장 치욕적인 시대를 윤동주는 가장 고통스럽게 살다 간 시인입니다. 그래서 그 시대를 살면서 윤동주는 항상 어떻게 살 것인가, 그리고 어떻게 바르게 살 것인가의 문제를 항상 고민했습니다. 그래서 윤동주의 시에는 부끄러움, 치욕, 욕되다 이런 단어가 많이 등장합니다. 그래서 평자들은 윤동주의 시를 부끄러움의 미학 혹은 순결성의 미학 혹은 결벽성의 미학이라고 이름 붙입니다. 특히 그 하늘을 우러러 한 점 부끄러움이 없기를 잎새이는 바람에도 나는 괴로워했다. 이렇게 시작되는 윤동주의 서시는 짧고 아름답게 자기 시대의 문제 그리고 자기 삶의 문제를 잘 표현하고 있습니다. 그래서 서시와 같은 시인은 그 한국인들뿐만 아니라 그 세계의 모든 나라 사람들에게 자신의 삶의 문제와 관련되어서 공감대를 형성할 수 있다라고 생각을 합니다.
The title Forward contains two meanings. The poem is the prelude to his posthumous work of poems, Heaven, the Wind, Stars, and Poems. But it is also a piece that symbolizes his entire life. This work was a symbol of his determination and hope of being shameless. The beautiful poetic terms that express the poet's existential anguish into lyricism give warm consolation to the readers. This is precisely why the poem is selected as Yoon Dong-ju's representative work. After all those long years, his lyricism and sensitivity still remain in many people's hearts today.
The reason that Yoon Dong-ju's poems create much sensation and appeal to readers is because of the lyrical elements in his poems. But at times, we can better appeal to readers by singing of beauty and being sensitive to feelings, not only by powerful and intense elements.